Hi everybody, Chef Heidi here. Today we're going to be talking about the dry heat cooking technique of searing. And the reason we spend a lot of time on this in the culinary world is because it is such a widely utilized and important technique of cooking, okay? So when we think about searing, we think about three very important achievable goals: color, flavor, and texture. The big fancy name for that is called the Maillard reaction, based on a scientist who discovered that when you add protein to high heat, you get these three beautiful results: color, flavor, and texture. Okay. So when we're talking about our steaks, our scallops, our chicken, we're wanting that beautiful brown, because brown food tastes good, right? That beautiful brown crust on that steak, on that scallop, that hard sear, so to speak. That is an industry standard and something that you want to definitely be able to achieve as chefs. So let's talk about how to get there, okay? So I have a couple steps that are going to help you and not sabotage your searing technique. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is take our protein and trim it, right, of anything that we don't want. If we're talking about scallops, we're removing the tabs or the feet, right, that little end. If we're talking about pork, we're taking off that silver skin. In any sense, just trim your proteins and make them beautiful and ready for cooking. That is step one. Trim your protein. Okay. Step two, season your protein, whether that be a wet marinade or a dry rub. Okay. Take a minute and liberally season that protein, right? If we're going to sear it, we're going to get that beautiful bark. We like that dry rub. We'll talk about wet marinades in just a second. But step two is to season it. Step three is going to take us away from our protein and more focus on our hardware today. So we're going to need a skillet that's big enough to accommodate what we're cooking. There's nothing worse than an overcrowded pan, which will end up in the result of steaming your product instead of searing it, right? So if we steam it or boil it, right, we're thinking corned beef, cabbage type situation, which is great on St. Patrick's Day, not so awesome here because we want that brown, crusty reaction. We can't get it if our product is wet, okay? So we're gonna season our protein. We're gonna have a nice big skillet that's not gonna steam it, okay? And then we are also gonna talk about our oils today. So when you're searing something specifically, you need an oil that can get super, super hot and not fall apart, okay? To do that, we need an oil that has what's called a high smoke point. So any kind of vegetable oil, canola oil, clarified butter, even butter, okay, in some cases, definitely not olive oil. And I know there are like 97 ways to skin a cat in a kitchen, but for searing purposes, I'm pretty passionate about having that neutral oil, so it can come to that high smoke point and give us that brown, delicious color and texture and flavor that we're wanting, okay? So step three is grab your skillet, grab your oil, get ready, okay? Step four, dry off your protein. This is often a mind blow for my students. What? I just spent like 3 hours making this marinade, chef, and it's gorgeous, and you're telling me to wipe it off? Why? Well, let's think about that for a minute. Chances are your marinade is full of beautifully cut and minced garlic and cilantro and all kinds of things that inherently are going to burn to smithereens when you put it on a high heat source, such as a grill or a cast iron skillet that's really hot. Then we're left with that bitter kind of yucky, okay? So please do wipe off your marinade from your product. Dab dry your steak with that dry rub on it, right? Because that salt is going to kind of leach out the moisture. Moisture is the enemy of dry heat cooking, okay? So dry it off, get it ready, okay? Pop is what I call the next step. We have our pan, we have our oil, and we have our product or our protein, okay? So you're gonna heat up that oil and we're gonna use our eyeballs first. We're gonna look for a couple things. That oil is gonna go in thick. The heat is gonna thin it out, okay, to the consistency of more like water, all right? We're gonna use our other senses when we put that protein in, our ears, right? Our eyes again, and of course our nose, all right? But we're gonna heat up that oil and we're gonna look. The second you see that oil smoke, you've got to be ready with that protein. You're going to lay that in away from you so it doesn't splatter. And we're going to listen, right, for this huge, thunderous round of applause. Just like that. If you put the protein in and it goes, I don't want to be at that party. Nobody wants to be in that party. So make sure your skillet is hot and it's ready for that protein and you hear that beautiful sizzle, okay? Then leave it alone. Don't poke it, don't prod it, don't check it. for at least a minute. Okay, we're on medium to high heat here. Let that sear, let that beautiful crust start to form. Your food will talk to you right now. It will tell you when it's ready to be flipped because it will lift itself off the pan. It won't fight you. Okay, if it's stuck and you're fiddling with it, leave it alone. It's telling you, I'm not ready. Okay, so then we're going to flip it over. We're going to have that gorgeous sear on both sides. Again, we're looking for color, flavor, and texture here. That's the goal. Okay, and once we have that, we're going to take that protein off the heat source. It is going to continue to cook a little bit more. We call that carryover cooking, but we're smart, so we've allotted for that. We're going to take that off the heat and we're going to let it rest. Okay, you have to let your steaks in particular rest. My rule of thumb is half the cooking time is your resting time. Super easy. If you've cooked it for 10 minutes, let it rest for 5 minutes. Okay, let it chill. You've made it mad. All the juices are in the middle. Letting it rest lets those juices kind of disperse evenly right back into the steak so that when you slice it, if you're going to slice it for your customer, we're not juicing all over the board, which is not appealing. Okay. Also, when you plate this, don't cover up your money. Your guest, your client has asked for a seared product. Show off your hard work. Show off, show them what they paid for. Okay. Don't sauce it completely. Do a drizzle down the middle. Better yet, sauce around it to show off that work, to show off what you have created for them because that's what they asked for ultimately. Okay. So again, just to quickly recap for searing only, this dry heat cooking technique, you are going to trim and prep your protein. You are going to season your protein. You're going to make sure you have the appropriate size skillet and oil to cook your protein. You're going to dry it off because moisture is the enemy of dry heat cooking, right? You're going to place that in. You're going to let it sizzle. We want to hear that sizzle, okay? And then you're going to leave it alone. And you're going to let that crust form. It's going to talk to you and tell you. You're going to flip it over. You're going to let it rest, and it's going to be glorious. So, dry heat cooking technique number 1, searing is covered. Thank you.